how you doing? That's me, Bishop Gordon Bennett, and I know who you are. You are young people who are fired up about giving your gifts and talents for service in the church. Now, when we talk about ministry, what we're talking about is really trying to do our best to live the life of Jesus in this world. And I know that as young people, a lot of people don't believe that you are called to this or that you are capable of it. But I want to tell you that from coast to coast, I know young people who are doing their very best to do precisely that, to live the life of Jesus in this world. And each one of them can tell you a story about how that's true in their own lives.
This past Christmas, we went to a kind of like a retirement home. And there was this one lady who, she couldn't get out of her bed. And so what we did is we went to her room and we all sang a carol to her. And so and when we were done, she kind of just like, she waved me over and she grabbed my hand and she just kind of held it. And then she she wanted me to lean closer, so I leaned closer and she just kissed me on the cheek. And it was just like, wow, we really are making a difference. It was really cool.
When I first met Francine and Nadine, they're two homeless sisters who I was talking to, I went up to them and I said, "How are you doing today?" And Nadine turned to me and said, "As long as Jesus is in my life, I'm doing good." And that just blew my mind. Here a woman is homeless, doesn't know where she's sleeping tonight, doesn't know where her next meal is coming from, but as long as Jesus is in her life, she's doing good.
Almost every person whose house you work on, their faith in God, their faith in the church is so strongly rooted that it's quite amazing. They might not have a car, but they walk. They might not have enough money to buy all the clothes they need, but they still give. It shows how much faith affects people, and it affects you in turn. When you're thinking about who to pray for, you usually think about the people you know face to face, and when you just say the poor, it's kind of hard to pray for them because you don't know anybody, and it puts a face to who you pray for.
I bet you hear a lot that people say to you that you are the church's future. And I believe that. But I want to emphasize today that you are also a very important part of the church's present. The church needs your energy and your vision right now.
A lot of people like to say that young people are the church of the future. And I don't really like that because we are the church right now. We're not going to be part of the church in a couple of years. We have to take responsibility right now, being teens, and take on the leadership position and take on that responsibility.
We go to cities and we feed the homeless. We have youth get-togethers. We do so many things that, we're such an essential part to the church as it is.
Now, the best way to explain the mission of the church is to say that every person does his or her very best to try and live the life of Christ in this world. And that means young people. You are a very important part of the church's mission. We need your gifts and we need your spirit if the church is going to fulfill its mission to the world today.
Service is a huge part of my faith. Jesus lived as a servant, and we're called, as part of our faith, as Catholics, as Christians, to live as Jesus did.
Young people, just like you, are giving of themselves in ways that are both inspiring and heroic. Believe me. If I could say one thing to young people who are doing ministry for the church, I would choose a quotation from Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who said, when she was sending her sisters out to do ministry among the poor and the dying, she would say, "Let the people eat you up. Be totally available to the Christ who presents himself to you in the person that you are called to serve."
That's just so I won't forget. My name's Steve Angrisano, and I have forgotten my name at an important moment before. I was one time hosting, I was the MC for a youth rally with the Pope. It was in St. Louis a few years ago, And I really wanted to meet the Pope and make a great first impression, so I practiced. I thought, all right, I know what I'll do. I'll speak to him in his native language, which is Polish. So I learned how to say in Polish, hello, how are you? I am a good boy. I didn't want to say to the Pope, hello, this is a cow, so I went with, how are you? I am a good boy. And I forgot. The short story is I forgot all the words. When he walked in, I just said, no words would come out. So I just kind of gazed into his eyes and lost all consciousness or something. I don't know, I didn't have any words, but it was a great day. It was a youth rally. And the last thing he said before that moment, and I can quote it almost word for word. He said, young people, in the days and months and years ahead, for as long as you can remember this day, remember that the Pope came here to the city of St. Louis to call the young people of America to Christ. Christ is the light. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. And then he said, this is my favorite part, he said, on the edge of this city stands the Gateway Arch, which reflects the sunlight in its many colors and hues. In the same way, in 1,000 different ways, you must reflect the light of Christ. And when I look at you, I kind of see that, especially because you are young. You are called to stand up and be a light to our church and to our world. Jesus chose young people. The disciples were young people. God chose young people. Mary was young. And I think it's because your energy and your enthusiasm and your courage is what we need to change our world and to make a difference. So as I look at the ministry that you do for our church, I see that there's some basic principles that kind of guide us in the ministry that we do to each other and in the ministry that you bring to our church. One of those is to be authentic and loving, to be authentically who you are. You are an ambassador for us to the world, an ambassador of our church, your individual parish, and the whole church. And people see you and they say, wow, well, that's what it means to be Catholic, to be like that. I know and have seen time and again the love and the compassion that you have. And to share that is a gift to all of us. Also, you're called to be authentically who you are. You're a teenager. You have a lot of gifts that you bring in that way. You're not called to be little miniature adults. If God wanted that, He'd have had us all born with business suits on. He calls you to be who you are. And that love and that joy and that passion that you bring as a teenager is different than what someone brings as an adult. And I think it's important in our churches to recognize that and to let you stand up and be who you are and for you to be unafraid to do that.
Being authentic is one of the most important things there is when being a confirmation peer, because people can tell when you're trying to fake or when you're trying to be someone else.
When people say that I'm representing the Catholic Church, when I'm going out and meeting different people, it's a great responsibility because pretty much you're representing this whole organization and you're representing Christ to others. You can represent a whole world of understanding and love, and I think it's necessary that people go out there and be proud of the church that they belong to.
A Catholic is a Catholic no matter where they're from, and I like it. And I like how the Catholic Church also isn't afraid to take views. The Catholic Church has an opinion on everything.
I've always been Catholic. I've grown up a Roman Catholic, and I am as much a part of the church as it is a part of me. And to me, it's just part of who I am.
The second thing is competency. We're called to be competent, to be pretty good at what we do. I'm a musician, and I've done it for a long time, and I'd like to think that today I'm at least a little better than I was a year ago or a few years ago. When I first started playing the guitar, I learned a G chord. That was my first chord. But if I'd have stuck just with that, my songs would be kind of boring because it'd just be one thing. I've learned a lot since then, and it's because I've worked at it, and I've tried to be better at what I do, and we're called in the same way. You owe it to yourself and to all of us to learn, not to say I want to be a lector, but I don't really want to practice, I just want to show up at church and read because it's fun. You're called to learn to proclaim that word with passion and to be good at what you do as a minister.
A couple years ago, I went on my confirmation retreat, and when I first got there, it was a little bit scary because there's these high schoolers just watching you walk in the front door. Throughout the weekend, I was I was having fun and it was a great time. But when it really hit me was Saturday night. We were having a liturgy, and right before we walked in, they were talking about the weekend, how much fun they were having, and how they liked all the confirmation candidates. And I saw them and just hit me. I wanted to be one of them. It just looked like that was my calling. There is quite a bit of responsibility being a peer minister. It takes up, it extends throughout the whole year, because as soon as one's over, you have to start planning for the next one, because we plan very far in advance, and you have to decide what retreats you're going on, who's going to do what talks, what committees they're going to be on to organize everything. And then we do sessions, like 3 or 4 or 5 sessions each year that are about 4 hours long, where we plan our talks and coordinate everything that's going to happen over the weekend. And most of them are mandatory, so it takes quite a bit of responsibility to be there.
As a sacristan, they expect me to arrive on time. They expect me to just be ready for any problems that might occur during Mass. I started out as a freshman altar server. I then became a junior altar server, then a senior. And from getting from one level to the next, I had to take a lot of tests. On the tests, they tested us on what the tabernacle was, the sacramentary, the ciborium, the boat, the censer. Since they already knew that I was an altar server, a senior altar server, they knew that I was competent enough to know what I was doing during Mass.
The third principle is dignity, and that's just recognizing the dignity of the people around you and yourself, the dignity of the people we serve. We don't serve because they need us. We serve because it's an honor to help the body of Christ and to be there for each other.
I see God in everyone, because no matter how mean they are when I meet them or how nice they are, I feel like deep down inside they have the love of God in them. And so I try to find their light and try to find what keeps them going. And I feel like God keeps everyone going. He keeps me going sometimes.
When I went to Appalachian Service Project in Tennessee, I met Jeannie, and she lived in this trailer, and she didn't have running water or electricity. One time when we were working in her house and trying to clear things out, we came upon this picture that looked like an old woman, and we were like, "Oh, Jeannie, what's this?" And she said, "Oh, that's my mother," and she held it, and she was so happy to have it, and she explained to us how her mom had died, and that was her prized possession, this picture of her. Even though the picture frame was cracked, she loved it. And so she told us the story about her abusive boyfriend got drunk one night, and he came back to the trailer, and in some mad rage, he took the frame and threw it on the ground, broke it, which explains why it was broken, and urinated on it. And that crushed her, because that was the most important thing in her life. Her mother had died, that's the only thing she had of her. And to see someone disrespect it, it was really hard for her. And so later on in the week, we went to Walmart and got her this really pretty frame, and we got her a new frame for her mother. And we showed it to her, and she was so happy, and she cried, and it was just really cool.
The fourth principle is accountability, which just means we're supposed to do everything we can for ourselves and our friends to be worthy of the call that God has given us, to live out our life and our ministry to the highest standard that we possibly can. And that means a couple things. It means sometimes we'll see a situation where we need to approach someone and say, "Hey, that's not what we're about here. That's not why we do this." Maybe it means sometimes that we need to be approached and someone say, "Hey, remember what we're about. Remember who you are." And let God call us to be a true example of the light of Christ in this world.
As a peer minister team, we're like a family almost, and we're always in each other's business. We hold each other accountable for everything that we do.
When I'm with the kids, I definitely feel like I'm in charge of them. That they're my kids. I really have to watch what I say, how I act.
Know what it is that the church stands for. Know what it is that it's about. In December of 2002, I was asked by the Catholic Bishops' Conference to come and set up an Office of Child and Youth Protection. Before I came to work for the Catholic Bishops' Conference, I spent nearly 25 years working for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. There I investigated crimes both nationally and internationally. I think it's very important that you as young people in youth ministry represent the church to the best of your ability. Know what it is that the church stands for. Know what it is that it's about. Recognize that you are a role model, not only for your peers, but for young people who look up to you. They have to know that you understand what the church is about, what the church's beliefs are. You have to convey that information to the adults around you. And you, as part of the church now, will only grow and develop and become greater leaders in the church in the years to come.
So in my life and in my ministry, you, the young church, have been Christ to me. And I see God in you and in the way you live your life with passion and with dignity. And I've discovered that in serving, God gives us so much. In my travel and as I spend weekends working with young people, you have been so important to me and my faith and shaped how I see God. It's my hope and my prayer for you that in your ministry in the church, you see God in those that you serve with and in those that you serve.
Hi, I'm Melissa McDermott Lane. I'm adjunct faculty at the University of Maryland School of Social Work, and I'm on staff at the Center for Families at the university. As a volunteer, you're going to come across situations in which you need to help children who may have been abused. There are no definite signs of abuse. The same signs that you see for abuse can be the same signs that a child or a teen shows for having some problems in their life, whether it be a death in their family, difficulty at school. All of these signs you need to pay attention to. If someone has been abused, they can disclose their abuse either verbally or they can show it through nonverbal behaviors. Verbally is them coming up and saying, hey, I want to talk to you about something. Somebody's been bothering me, or I've got this weird situation I'm in. They can also disclose it verbally by indirect signs, not directly telling you, but starting to give you some hints about they may have possibly been abused. Nonverbal signs are what you're probably going to see first if someone has been abused. And you can see children who have marks on their body, and just asking them, how'd you get that mark? Where did it come from? It may be benign. It may be that a child got it by falling off a playground, a child got it by playing football, or it could be that someone is harming them. Nonverbal disclosures come out through the children's play. You may see a child playing really violently. One doll is beating up another doll a lot, or they're acting out dialogue that's happened at home. Their play may be sexualized. They may have the dolls or the toys they're playing with doing sexual acts. Or children may indeed start acting out sexually. They may be touching other kids on the playground inappropriately. And what you may get is the child who received the touch from the other child coming up and saying, hey, Bobby did this to me. Sometimes you can see behavioral changes. You may have a kid who has been outgoing, happy, playing with all the other kids, and then all of a sudden they stop playing. They start to withdraw. You may see a child's emotions change. They may be a child who is happy and all of a sudden start to be sad, or a child who starts to be very angry. Again, responding to what's going on in their environment. With older kids and teens, you may start to see alcohol use and drug abuse. It's, for a lot of kids, they think, hey, if I get drunk, if I do drugs, I don't have to feel the pain that's going on inside of me. You also want to look out for self-mutilating behaviors, or where they're harming themselves. They're starting to cut themselves. They're starting to pick at themselves. They're putting themselves in risky situations. Again, it may not be abuse. It may be something else that's going on, but all of those need attention. Last thing to kind of look for is secretive behaviors. Most offenders who abuse child abuse, sexual abuse, or emotional abuse want to keep it secret. And they start to teach the individuals who they are victimizing that they need to keep quiet. So you may see a child who is withdrawing and not talking a lot because they're making all of their world secretive. Or they're pulling another kid off to another area and doing things in private and secrecy. All of these behaviors warrant you taking another look at what's going on, talking with your supervisor, and talking with the child who's showing the behaviors or who's making the disclosure. When people think of sex abuse, they normally think of a young child with an adult, but sexual offenders can abuse young children and they can also abuse teenagers.
I never thought it would happen to me. When that all happened, everybody was just shocked, because it just seemed like it was normal behavior. He was just one of our friends, just chilling with us. But I realized that he's a teacher. He's 35 years old, and I'm 16. Or I was 16 at the time.
One of the common things that goes on with sexual offenders is that they groom the individual who they want to sexually abuse. Grooming can come about positively or negatively. An example of a positive grooming is that they start to pay extra special attention to you. You start to get extra privileges. They bring you little gifts. They start to bring you into their circle and get you close with them.
My freshman year, I played football first semester, and then the second semester I didn't have anything to do, so I joined the drama program. And when I got involved with that, I had a lot of fun and decided that I want to continue with it. And the reason why I had so much fun with this is because, first of all, there was a cool group of people, but then also our director, I thought was this really cool, really amazing guy, you know. And you know, he was just like, he was a teacher and at the school, and he was the director, and he would hang out with us and talk to us like we were, you know. A lot of teachers have this separation between student and teacher, and he didn't. So I thought that was just really cool because he was this director who would talk, you know, who would act like a teenager. And so I wanted to just, you know, be as much involved with drama as I could so that I could be one of his favorites, because he treated his favorites very well, and everybody wanted to be one of those people who had like this inner circle.
An example of a negative grooming is they get you caught up in a conspiracy with them. A classic example is a sex offender who brings a child or a teenager to their home, has pornographic materials out, and of course the child and the teenager opens up the materials, and the sex offender comes back and says, "Ah, you're looking at that. You shouldn't be looking at that. But you know what? I won't tell your folks. I'm going to keep that secret between you and me." And through that negative interaction, they then keep you caught in their web of secrecy.
I played football. When I wanted to play football again in the fall, he took it as a personal insult. It made me feel really guilty about devoting my time to football and not to drama. So when it got to that point where I was just so involved with it that I wasn't doing anything else, and where I was actually considering giving up football, I talked to my parents about it, and they were giving me a lecture of how I can't neglect my responsibilities at home, and I finally just told them, I was like I can't stop going to drama because otherwise he'll make me feel guilty. You know, I've seen it done to my other friends where if you don't do something, then you're kind of exiled from the group, and he has that kind of control over us. And my parents said, that's not right. You know, you shouldn't be pressured into doing something like that. And they were like, well, what else happens? So when I started telling my parents that, you know, he would make comments about us or our friends or with a sexual nature, and they were like, that's not right. There's something wrong there. And then I told them about a couple of conversations I just had with him, and I showed him my instant messaging conversation. My computer saves all of my instant messaging conversations, and I showed him a couple of conversations I had with him, which were very, you know, sexually. He's asking me all these questions, and he was telling me all these stories about him, and my parents looked at that and they were just saying, "Michael, you can't. This is not right at all."
Some simple things you can do to keep yourself, you know, safe from this happening. Don't be alone with an individual. If an individual starts to give you lots of special attention, starts to bring you gifts, gives you extra tasks that they want you to do, just say no. If you feel uncomfortable, listen to what your body's saying and get out of that situation.
And that was like the first time I'd actually looked at it and realized that, you know, he's a teacher. He's not my friend. He's a teacher. You know, I shouldn't be talking about it. And when my parents found out, they got together with some other parents, and those other parents found out from their children that he had had those same kind of conversations with them. And so they ended up going to the principal, and we had to file an official report with the police, and I was interviewed by the administrators and the police, and then he was fired and charged.
If you have reason to believe that someone has been abused, you need to make a report to the authorities that can help them out. Child Protective Services is there to offer child protection, and law enforcement is there to be able to uphold the laws. Your role is to support the individual. Now, they may not want you to make the report, but that's not a promise you can make. If you have reason to believe, you don't have to know all of the details, but if you have reason to believe that that individual has been abused or is at risk of being abused, you need to make that report. I would encourage you to connect with your supervisor. They can help you make the report, but also they can offer you support. It's not every day that you hear someone disclose what's happened to them, or you learn that somebody may be in a harmful situation, and that can take a toll on you. So it's important for you to get support also.
But I also found out through that process that, he had had a verbal relationship with me, but the relationship he had with another student was a physical one. And that, shocked me, because I always thought that it was just a verbal thing, and that's why I guess I didn't take it so seriously, is because it's just a normal behavior. He was just saying stuff. It wasn't really hurting me. But found out that those, first of all, his conversations with me were inappropriate, and then he had also been taking that to another level with another student. And what scared me about that was that I was next in line to be that next student.
The standard advice if somebody touches you inappropriately is for you to say no and run away. That's sometimes easier said than done. Lots of times you're so caught off guard that someone has touched you inappropriately that you're almost kind of like a deer in headlights. You stop, you stand still for a minute, and you don't respond. And that's normal. And I see lots of times that people get mad at themselves because they didn't say no, they didn't run away. It's not your fault that the abuse happened, and it's not your fault that you weren't able to say no to the individual who was abusing you.
And I never thought it would happen to me. When that all happened, everybody was just shocked, because it just seemed like it was normal behavior. He was just one of our friends just chilling with us, but I realized that he's a teacher. He's 35 years old and I'm 16.
Hi, I'm Lenny Howard, Catholic school principal. Here's the deal. Every teacher, every volunteer at my school must know what to do when working with a student who has a problem. You as their friends also need to know what to do.
I was on my way home from track practice, and when I was looking out the window, I saw that my friend was running towards the car. Tears were streaming down her face, and I knew that she was in trouble. I got out of the car and I immediately hugged my friend because I knew that something was wrong. She was at the bus stop waiting for her ride, and a guy came up and sexually harassed her. She got out of there as fast as she could, and she ran back to school. My dad and I took her home. She tried calling her parents, and her parents were really mad at her because they couldn't understand, where was she? Why didn't she call them? And she tried to tell them what had happened, but they just weren't understanding. She was at the point where she was just about to give up, but I told her that she has to sit down with them and really make them understand what happened, because I knew her parents and I knew that they were really loving parents. I knew that they would understand eventually. And so when she got home, she got the chance to sit down with her parents and just tell them everything. And I was really glad that everything turned out okay.
One of the things that we hear about young people who minister in the church is that they're good listeners. Because we're part of a ministering church, we're privileged to hear some of the insights into their lives.
When someone comes to me with something that's happened to them, a relationship breakup or someone died, I think they want to talk about it. I think that they wouldn't be telling you unless they wanted to tell somebody how they're feeling. Because whenever you have any kind of extreme emotion, whether it's happiness, when you get a college acceptance letter, you want to tell somebody, or when someone dies, you want to tell somebody how you're feeling. So I think it's important just to listen to them and kind of not pressure them into a conversation, but kind of lead on a conversation and kind of let them lead, but ask a couple of questions to let them know that you're willing to listen.
What happens when a friend comes to you and says, look, I have something really important to tell you, but you have to promise not to tell anybody else?
I think that confidentiality does have its limits. If a friend or anyone in particular is, if their safety is an issue, then I would talk to someone else who is responsible.
Of course, when someone tells you a secret, you're supposed to keep it in confidence. But if that secret means that they're going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else, you have to break that secret. You have to tell somebody who can get them help. So when someone trusts you enough to share their story or crises with you, what do? 1, make sure you thank them for sharing their story with you. 2, if you have any question about their safety, get them immediate help. 3, think about the next steps, and if you can, talk to them about it. What professionals you have to bring in to have more expertise. 4, ask them to identify an adult that they trust enough to share their story with. And 5, make sure you pray for them.
Hi, I'm Chris Ashby, and it's been a blessing in my life to have a career doing something that I really love. I'm a Catholic youth minister. If your parish or school wasn't a safe place, would you even want to be there? Everyone in ministry or leadership positions in the church has to work towards providing a safe environment.
The church's responsibility to young volunteers who do ministry is the same as it is for anyone who does volunteer work or is employed by the church, and that is to make certain that they have a safe environment to work in, that they provide them with the information about what makes a safe environment, that they let them know that there are things that sometimes go wrong in church environments as they do in the rest of the world, and to make certain that people feel protected.
There was a priest in our parish who had the habit of taking the altar servers or anybody who was going into the high school seminary on trips and excursions, and sometimes would take them to the beach swimming. And so when I was in the 8th grade, I got an invitation to go on one of the trips with a group of other people. And on the way to this beach, one of the other kids leaned over to me and said, "You need to be careful about Father because he acts kind of funny sometimes. He's kind of funny." And I didn't know what it meant at first, but I found out what it meant later. People in that group just kind of recognized that the priest acted inappropriately. Didn't know exactly what it all meant or how it all got played out, but just knew that there was inappropriate activity.
When I see adults with youth, either teachers to students or youth ministers to youth who are in the parish, I think that there's an appropriate way for them to act, and that way is to realize that they are in a position of authority to you, and that limits your relationship, and that they have to know that there's certain lines that they can't cross. Or the physicalness, they can't, there's certain ways that they should not be touching you. A hug to a teacher is not a problem, but when that becomes more than a hug, then it's a problem.
I work with high school kids. There are retreat days, and they want to hug me, and graduations where they want to hug me, and I want to hug them too. I mean, quite honestly, there's an emotional connection. And I think that all needs to be natural, and I think it is natural. But I do think there are times when folks can set it up so they can easily go beyond what's appropriate. And sometimes, you come across a situation where a teacher or a youth minister or a priest is doing or saying something that you think is inappropriate that could lead to either a misunderstanding on the part of a young person or could lead to something that would be inappropriate. And I've spoken to them before. If there's a lot of inappropriate language or sexual language, if there's a lot of individual time spent between an adult and a student or an adult and a youth group person, I'll point it out.
Providing safe environment means providing appropriate supervision. But what is appropriate supervision? To figure that out, you got to ask yourself two questions. What kind of activity are we having? Some activities require more supervision than others. Then the other question is, who are we supervising? Because some young people require more supervision than others. When adults are arranging supervision, they have to consider how many people will be participating, if there will be both men and women supervising, if there will be enough coverage in the event of an emergency, and if supervisors will be accessible to those they are supervising. As a young person in a leadership role, you may need to help adults consider these same questions. And if you're participating in a ministry event, you should expect the same kind of preparations have been made for you.
The people who are in charge of me, they tell me that we can't be alone with the kids. Also, if we want to do activities outside of our big groups, we have to make sure that we're with another leader, just so that there's no complications or mix-ups.
Are you thinking about safe environment when planning activities? Do the activities we plan make people feel uncomfortable or encourage roughhousing? Are the activities we're planning putting people at risk, either physically or emotionally? As a ministry volunteer, you have power. In ministry, others will look to you for support, guidance, and instruction, and believe it or not, all that gives you power. It would be a misuse of that power to get a date or gifts or special favors. Using your position to better yourself financially or socially is a misuse of your power. And the purpose of our power is to serve.
I realized that, I could change this person's life. Whether my actions, what I say, what I do, how I treat them, and really I could change their life just the way I act. And that's really, it's a really big responsibility that I take seriously, I think.
As a volunteer, you have a responsibility to know the procedures for providing a safe environment. And if a peer or other leader is not providing that environment or ignoring those procedures, you owe it to yourself and to your peers to go to them and talk about it. And if they continue to ignore them, to go to their supervisor. We want young people to feel welcome in our church. Providing a safe environment helps do that. If your parish or school were not safe, would you want to be there?
Hi, I'm Laura Cartagena. I'm a philosophy major at Catholic University and part of the student ministry team there. Like you, I do a lot of service. I volunteer at several organizations that do outreach for the homeless and the poor. I do these things because I think they're important and because I want to make a difference.
My problem with faith a lot of times for kids my age is that they don't understand it, or they're not really into it. Not because it's not the cool thing, because a lot of people can go to church and it's okay, but just because they don't take the time to understand it, or they don't get the purpose of it. My main reason for doing it is because I'm a big church geek, and I like walking in and looking at a kid and being like, hey, you, and then the kid gets the idea that, oh, this is going to be cool, it's going to be fun, and I like giving people that motivation, because I remember when I got confirmed, the peer ministers, that's what they did for me. They made me go rethink what I was doing and realize that that's something I would enjoy doing.
I do ASP, that's Appalachian Service Project. It's really amazing. You get to meet so many different people from all around, both at your church and at other churches and other states, and then you really bond with the families that you're helping, and it's amazing. You really feel after working all day and you're all sweaty and dirty and you're covered with who knows what, you really feel like you've done something, and you see the satisfaction.
Being at my church, I feel like I've gotten a taste of the world a little bit more, because with some of the immigrants that come, they try to tell their stories about all the genocides that they've had, like in Africa, about their family that they left behind, and about what they had to go through, and how grateful they are for what they have left. I think there's a call out there, and I think I've started to listen to it more, the call to serve, because my priest, he's helped me in that my eyes have been opened a little bit more to everything around me, and I'm like, I really just want to help. So I've been trying to help as much as possible. If I'm free, take on every opportunity I have.
What are people in the church looking for? I think one of the most attractive things is people who know what being Catholic is all about and who try to live that lifestyle. The church needs people who are honest and straight up.
Whenever you're a Eucharistic minister, peer minister, singing in the choir, anything, where people will look up to you, and you're representing the church. You don't want to do anything too stupid. You don't want to do anything that might contradict what the church teaches, because you are a representative of the church, and you don't want to do anything that might set a bad example for somebody else, because other people will look up to you. So
I strive for holiness because I believe that it's important to really trust in God, because in the end, it's only God who's there.
I love the church. It's awesome, and I want to represent it the best way that I can.
I love being Catholic. I really do, especially being African American. There are not very many black Catholics. And a lot of my friends say, why are you Catholic? And there are very few organizations in the world that have such an all-encompassing effect. You can take a Bible passage on any given day, and it's the same passage as being spoken everywhere in the world, without question. And there are not that many things that have such a significant effect. Catholicism, it's just so broad and expansive, and there's just nothing else, and I love that aspect of it.
I love being Catholic. It's every time I wake up, or I think, like, what if I was born like something else? I'm like, whoa, that'd be weird. I mean, it's a part of me. I love going to Mass. Well, not always, but it's just a big part of my life. It's so funny because just over the past couple of years, being Catholic, I've started to see things through Catholic eyes, especially since I'm growing in my faith and service. And it's just amazing to me because every time now I see something new or something that's exciting, I'm like, well, what's the Catholic point of view on this? And it's just really cool, and I just love it. It's so rich, and the tradition is awesome. It's just, and the Eucharist,
We are called to serve responsibly. We are called to be accountable and authentic. We are called to be competent and to treat others with dignity. We are called to make a difference.
Everybody has dignity and value worth. Everybody. Because everybody is proud of themselves to some extent, and everybody has some good to bring to the table. And sometimes you have to dig deeper to bring it out, but everybody has it. There's a certain type of person I like to reach out to. It's like the quiet little person that sits in the corner, doesn't really like to interact with anybody. I like to go over there, be like, hey, my name is Colin, how are you doing? What school do you go to? And just get to know them and become their friend. And that to me is like the basis of it, to open out and reach out to people. That's my calling, because I've just always felt that whenever somebody needs help, I should be there to help them.
For me, it makes sense that if you love Christ, that you would love your brothers and sisters. We need to keep saying yes to God's call and do it in ways that are faithful to the church.
The service that I've done in the past really did start with my faith. And just the people who I've been hanging out with, I mean, they've inspired me to grow in my faith. And then not only that, they've inspired me that to go out and do service will help me grow in my faith. And I mean, faith without works is no faith at all. So, I mean, definitely there is a connection.
In the New Testament, Jesus says that there are two skills that a person needs to have to be the disciple. One is to hear the Word of God, and the other is to do it. So every good disciple needs to, first of all, be able to hear the Word of God, particularly through prayer and through reading the Scriptures and through trying to assimilate all of that the Scriptures tell us about following the Lord. But the other is to actually do the will of God, to do the will of God in our lives. And that means exercising compassion and justice and charity for all without exception.